Cougar Dash is what I'll call it. We are back. Dash Sports is back as we head into the college football season, which means Cougar Dash is back. So we are going to get right into it, talking about the biggest story of, it seems like, every WSU football off season for the past however many years. There's another quarterback battle. For the first time, there's a returning participant, at least, so that's something new. But we've got Jayden Dolores coming off a true freshman season with 4 starts in the 4 games, going up against Jarrett Garantano, transfer from Tennessee, longtime starter in the.
I heard that.
No, I was gonna say Guarantano. Haven't said his name in a while, but Jarrett Garantano, Tennessee transfer, longtime SEC starter who came in. Both are trying to win the job. Nothing's been announced. The game is 2 days away. Don't even know if there's one internally, but if they've decided one internally, but we have no idea. So I'm going to ask you what you think or what you make of everything that's been going on.
Well, it's probably going to come down to the night before it happens, I assume, to see who's going to be the starting guy under center. And it's exciting to see it come down to the wire like this right before the first game of the season, right before, the non-conference schedule. But to be honest with you, it's kind of insane to see that Cameron Cooper isn't really involved in this race. But I mean, Jayden Dolores did have the year under his belt beforehand, or I guess you can call it the 4 games under his belt beforehand. And Jarrett Garantano is a transfer that Rolovich wanted to bring in here. I mean, these are both guys that Rolovich wanted on the team in some shape or form. And Dolores had a real, tough offseason of things with all of his drama that he's had. But, I mean, if I had to pick a guy that I'm pretty sure will start week 1, not necessarily going to be the starter throughout the season, but just with the amount of, question marks associated with him, I think Garantano is going to be the starter on Saturday because he's got that veteran, background with him from Tennessee, even though all the Tennessee fans are probably swarming WSU Twitter right now to slam the guy some more. But, he's got the veteran background to bring to WSU. We're going to have another transfer quarterback come in and, try to save the team here. But, it's not saying that Dolores' career is over or anything like that. He just had his COVID season as a freshman. He's still got plenty more years of eligibility, but Garantano, I'm suspecting will play on Saturday. That's just my best speculation, but curious to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I think both of them are going to play. Rolovich talked about this a lot last year, and he showed it at Hawaii that he's not scared to, switch it up and pull a guy, whether it's before a week or during a game, put the other guy in if he thinks that gives him a better shot to win. And I just, these first 2 games should not be competitive games, as we'll get into later. And so I think that, lends it to kind of using both of them, whether that's one of them kind of coming in the 4th quarter when the game's out of hand, or, actually using both of them during the course of the game. But the thing that I'm kind of stuck on is last year, Rolovich was not going to announce who the starter was. And he had decided, I forget how, much farther out from the game than right now we are to this game. He had decided, and it got leaked. The only reason it came out is because it got leaked, and he had no plans of doing that. So the fact that it hasn't gotten leaked yet, I think that might lend itself to the fact that I don't even know if he knows yet. I don't even know if Rolovich has made up his mind, and I think these first 2 games might be preseason games, so to speak, for the quarterback competition. I mean, Garantano had 1 play in the spring game. Dolores didn't play in the spring game. Obviously, they've had, some scrimmages, but I don't even think Dolores was around for those. So there's not a lot of game action that these 2 have been in the past, however many months, 6-8 months. So I think he might need a little more time to figure it out. I would still go with Dolores. I don't know how Rolovich is going to view it, but I view the fact that, Garantano is gone after this year and Dolores can stick around as the tiebreaker. I think if it's close, then you roll with a guy who's got potential to be the future. He already chose him once. He clearly likes him. He kept him around, as he dealt with his tumultuous offseason. So I would still go with Dolores, and I think the stuff that we saw him do, especially in those first 2 games last year. I mean, he was a true freshman. He's got more time under his belt. I think he could be a lot better. And I was never crazy sold on Garantano when he showed up. I thought if he was really all that great, he probably wouldn't have gone from Tennessee to WSU. But I mean, it's going to be up to one of them to really take the job and run with it. And because if it's close at any point, we'll see them flip-flopping back and forth. But whoever does get it, if they can just, if they come out strong, then it could be theirs, to lose and theirs to run with for the season.
The only thing that I have to say against Dolores, taking the opening snaps on Saturday, I agree that there might be kind of a 2-quarterback situation on Saturday, but I think it's going to be, for the most part, Dolores following in Garantano's footsteps. I mean, Dolores got all the years of eligibility left, and this is Garantano's last year. So we all saw a year of Dolores. It wasn't perfect by any means. It wasn't atrocious by any means. It was kind of just a lab rat of a season, right? I mean, everybody was kind of trying to put together some sort of momentum to have somewhat of a season. Now, we saw a year, quote unquote, of Dolores. And Garantano, you're right, we've seen 1 pass from him during the spring game. It was an unfortunate interception, got hurt, and that was it for him in the spring game. So in terms of outside personnel, people who are not associated with WSU athletics, we've seen Garantano throw 1 pass in a Cougar uniform. Everybody inside that organization has seen him throw hundreds of passes, if not over 1,000 passes. They're going to have a better idea about Garantano than anybody else, obviously, right? So I can see them running kind of a majority Garantano situation and maybe put Dolores out there when the game's a runaway. We can kind of get into the game a little bit later on in the show going against Utah State this Saturday. But Garantano, like I said, he brings the veteran mentality here. He brings sort of a new, well, I shouldn't say new trend at quarterback because we keep having these transfers come in to play quarterback, but this could very well be a learning season for Dolores. I mean, judging off of his offseason alone, things could have gone a lot worse for the guy, and maybe Rolovich is wanting to take some baby steps with him and say, hey, let's have this guy started out a little bit. He intrigued me a lot. We're going to bring him out to WSU. It's his last graduate season. WSU is still in, I don't want to call it a rebuilding phase, but just a new era of football. So they're still trying to figure things out. They're still trying to figure out the run and shoot. However, that kind of favors Dolores in a way in terms of the run and shoot. It's like, he played the 1 year with that.
Well, even before he ran it in high school, I believe. So he was familiar coming in.
Right. So, I mean, it's an interesting kind of tug of war situation here, but Garantano going out there and just playing, the first snaps out there at quarterback. He did play the first snap in the spring game, right? It wasn't Dolores that was out there. So they probably have the same. What's that?
First snap in the spring game was a long snap, but I'll let it slide.
Yeah, that's right. The first quarterback snap in the spring game was Garantano, and it may very well be the first snap of the regular season, the non-conference schedule. So it's not going to be a make or break, if Garantano takes those first snaps, then, Dolores is going to be bench riding the whole season. They could be, hey, this is what it takes to run a mistake-free drive, if you will, and, go back out there and see what you can do. These non-conference schedules this is almost kind of a preseason of sorts, kind of like they do in the NFL. Yeah. We're going to see who's going to be the top guy here, and then when we get into the conference schedule, that's going to be the guy they're rolling with for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Garantano takes the first snap, I won't really think much of it. I'll wait until, second quarter, second drive or whatever, because I do expect to see both of them no matter who starts and no matter what the plan is, even if one of them is the clear-cut starter.
I will say if Garantano takes the first snap and throws an interception once again and gets hurt, then I don't think there's any defending the guy at that point. I think Dolores have round two.
But if Dolores comes out and takes the first snap, then I think that is a definitive statement that he's the guy. So that I think there's a lot riding on that. And so we're going to have to wait and see. But now we're going to talk about the guy who's got that decision on his mind, probably thinking about that quite a bit, Nick Rolovich. Technically, year 2, second season under him. As last season it counts in terms of time, but not really in terms of a full season. But it's still technically year 2 of the Rollo era. And we talked a year ago about expectations for his first season, and obviously there was so many things that went wrong and just unplanned. Not even but not even his fault about that. But year 2 should be a normal season, not 100% normal, but much closer to normal. So what are your expectations or, predictions, or just what do you think, expectations. What are your expectations for
I can tell
Rolovich
you
this year?
kind of my bar for him, or my minimum for him, is it's got to be an improvement of some sorts based off of last year. I mean, last year, I mean, we're technically looking at a 25% win percentage. So
Yeah.
that's, see it however way you want. It was 4 games, but not an Apple Cup on there or anything like that, right? So there's got to be an improvement of some sorts, whatever it may be. Like the win totals, the total yards, less turnovers, things. I mean, there has to be an improvement going on this season, because although the first season was kind of a guinea pig year, like we were kind of discussing, it also is, I can't remember how long his contract is per se. I want to say it's 4 or 5 years, something like that.
Probably not that it really matters.
Right. Because I'd be surprised if this past year counted towards his contract.
I think it does.
It does? Okay. I mean,
That'd be my guess.
he is training them off the field.
I mean, he got
paid.
He got paid. So
yeah. So I mean, year 2 for Rollo is really just going out there and getting more than one conference win, and a conference win that's not against Oregon State. Getting a conference win against a Cal that we could have very well won last year. Getting a conference win against ASU potentially, which would be a nice win, but they're very competitive. The Pac-12 is no slouch by any means when it comes to college football, but coming out in year 2 and running this offense like you made everybody believe, saying, oh, this is like the premier offense, this is what I ran in Hawaii. We're not doing this air raid anymore. We're going to use Borgie a little bit more. Like, you gave us all these expectations, and you absolutely killed it in terms of off-season hype with the Bucket Hat Nation and everything, right? So he absolutely killed it in off-season hype. Got into that year, 4 games played, only the 1 win, and it was the very first game. So in terms of year 2, it's got to be an improvement on a number of things, but I think the number one thing for me is the offense, making sure that that's, a well-oiled machine going into the next year. Because some of the play calling he had in some of these games is stuff that sticks out to me to this day that I hope will be mitigated in this next year. But the offensive side of the ball, I know the defense is a work in progress, but this offense, this run and shoot, this quarterback competition, Borgie coming back for potentially his last year, all eyes are going to be on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Rolovich has to get 4 wins this year, or else he's in a really bad spot. I mean, I don't know if Pat Chun will fire him, but if he doesn't get 4 wins, then it's going to be really tough. I mean, it was, known when he was brought in. He, like Leach before him, was a controversial off-field figure. Leach was, he struggled for the first few years, but amidst controversy, he was winning games. So, all will be forgotten when you win football games. But, for everything that has happened off the field, for him to go out and not compete, I think is going to be really, really tough. Just, for everything, I don't know what, it's going to be hard to do that after essentially 1 year, because it's hard to judge a guy by 1 year. But I mean, you've got to be ruthless sometimes. If a guy's not the guy, you got to roll with it. I think Rolovich can be the guy. I want him to be the guy. I have a lot of faith in him as a leader, but I just haven't seen it on the field yet. So that's going to be huge. But 4 wins, I think, is the bare minimum. I think best case scenario for this team is probably 6, maybe 7, depending on what I think they play 13. Before a bowl game. So, yeah, maybe 7, best case scenario. But, yeah, I mean, this team doesn't have a huge ceiling, but the floor could be pretty bad. I mean, when you're looking at the Pac-12, Oregon State and Arizona have been kind of the bottom, but Oregon State, I mean, they beat Oregon at the end of the year, I believe. I mean, they were, playing a lot better at the end of the year than they were at the start. Arizona's got a new head coach. It seems like a lot of teams are trending up, and if WSU can't join them in that, then I think that's going to be some tough calls to make. But yeah, I mean, having some consistency and some carryover from last year, obviously, a lot of the starters are coming back. That should help. But, I mean, we just got to see it on the field. I mean, not even losing games, but the way some of those games were lost last year, you do that in front of fans, and that's just not good. Like, there's so much pressure across the country for every team this year because they didn't play in front of fans last year. So as good as you were in front of fans, you've got to be, it's way more important to be that good. As good as you are without them, you've got to be even better with them. So a lot of pressure is on to succeed. And, we've struggled through a little bit, but I mean, coming off of 2018, this team was a top 10 team at the end of the year. So we know what the potential is. So he's really got to make a big improvement. I think 4 wins is bare minimum for what I would deem I'd call that that's like a C, a C, like you're passing, but it's not great.
Well, I mean, there's 3 non-conference games, right? 4.
Yeah,
maybe.
but one of them's BYU.
Yeah, so
that's tougher than a normal non-conference.
Right. So I mean, looking at the schedule here, I mean, of course, things kind of get, you can never really predict a full season with everything that's going on. I mean, anything can happen, but back-to-back games against Utah State and then Portland State.
Yeah, those should be wins.
Right,
Arizona should be a win. Oregon State should be a win. That's why I say 4. If you don't win those 4 games, then I think there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. When they play Arizona, just the once, I thought they played them twice. I'm going off of basketball schedules here.
They play them right in between like Oregon and UW, I think. So
yeah, and that BYU game is in the middle of the year too, so that's going to be interesting. But it's at home, so I mean, the 4 wins minimum. Yeah, I could respect that. And
I won't be happy with 4 wins. Like that. That's not like I'll be happy. Like I'll be happy with 6 wins, but yeah, anything below 4 wins, and I think that's push the panic button territory.
Right. 4 wins for any Pac-12. I mean, we're trying our hardest not to be Arizona, right? I mean, 4 wins is definitely minimum. In terms of Rolovich's drama as of late, I mean, there's a lot more eyes on him now, more than ever, for off the field shenanigans.
Yeah.
So he's not necessarily as much of a crowd favorite as he came out to be when he came off that jet and landed into Pullman.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's had some issues off the field, on Pac-12 Media Day, recently with Cassidy Woods coming back up.
Mm-hmm.
He's had some issues off the field, and there's going to be even more judgment towards him as a coach of this football team. I mean, it just happens in sports. You could be the greatest coach of all time, the greatest player of all time, but if you're having all this drama happen off the court that the world is paying more attention to, arguably more attention to, and that takes into account of, our grading of Rolovich or whatnot. But just going out there and running his offense and putting, his money where his mouth is and just showing us exactly what you were planning out to do with Borghi, with this passing offense, with, maybe Dolores taking the starting job. The defense is a whole different equation really with us, with Jahad Woods being in his last year pretty much, right? So it's going to be a tough season to watch in terms of every good opponent that we're going to face. It's going to be a bit of a nail biter for not only like the score reasons, but just in terms of are they really proven what they're setting out to be? So in terms of second year, Rolovich got to get some wins on the board. I have said this before in the past, but if he gets 0 wins throughout the season, but then wins the Apple Cup, that is fine with me. That's your you can get out of the doghouse if you win the Apple Cup. If he gets 3 wins in the regular season and then wins the Apple Cup, then he's not at a C anymore. He's at probably about B range from there.
I mean, if they lose 11 straight games and then win the Apple Cup, I will be happy for that period of time, but I will not be happy with the whole season.
Which is fine, but we can make fun of UW to the end of our days if that was the case. So an Apple Cup
exactly.
rules overall, yes.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of some winnable games, hopefully a winnable game, this game against Utah State on Saturday, 8 p.m. So we're back to what we know and love as Cougar fans, which is WSU playing after the sun goes down, even in, I guess it's not technically the summer, but the sun's not setting at 4 o'clock yet. But WSU 17.5-point favorites. This is a Utah State team that went 1-5 last year, fired their head coach halfway through the season. I believe they scored 52 points in their 5 losses combined. They were not a great team, finished 11th in the Mountain West. And they were good a few years ago, Jordan Love, Matt Wells, but they're all gone now. But this is not a team that should give. I was surprised, I will say. When I saw 17.5, I was surprised because I don't think that this.
I was too.
I don't think that this WSU team is particularly good, especially not week 1 good. This is going to take some time to figure it out. But I guess Utah State is really bad. So it's hard to, take 17.5 points for a team that I don't think is particularly great. But I guess if the team they're going up against is even worse, I'd probably go with it. The Athletic had Utah State in the bottom 30 of the 130 teams. I mean, this is just not a very good team. They're a 117 or something. They're not great. So I guess I would take the points, and I guess this is going to be a blowout. But I'm not convinced of that.
I mean, the one thing we can say is they played more games than we did last year, but they also lost more games than last year. So, I mean, I'm trying to see if I can look up their team stats here from the last year because 15
wasn't great.
15 points a game, I think, is what I saw for offense, which is pitiful in college football.
So they scored 41 points in their win over New Mexico. They scored 52 points in all their other games. So those are largely skewed. I mean, I think they averaged under 2 touchdowns a game in total. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to look at these stats because, like I said, it's only 6 games, so not great stats. But I mean, their leading receiver had 200 yards. Their leading rusher had 250 yards. They used 2 quarterbacks, including former Utah quarterback Jason Shelley, both at around 50%. With almost he had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The other quarterback had 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. It just was not a particularly great team.
I think I'm reading this correctly. Their defense allowed almost 500 yards a game to the opposing team, which is astronomical. I feel like that's higher than WSU's number.
I mean, in the bad years for sure. But so we've talked about quarterback. There's a lot of other players on the team that are going to matter a ton, obviously. So give me some of your guys. I think everybody hopefully will have a big game, but give me your guys you think are gonna have a big game, guys you're excited to watch. Let's talk about some non-quarterback players for a few minutes here.
Well, I'm going to take the easy one right out the gate. We got to see Borghi put up a 100 game. I want 100 yards receiving, 100 yards rushing. That's my minimum for Borghi. If he's going to have this senior year campaign where this is his last, or it's not his senior years. I guess it is his senior.
I think he's been here for 4 years, I believe. He's technically
right. He doesn't have a redshirt year per se, and last year.
So he's got another year of eligibility,
so this is his 4th year with the team, basically.
I believe so. Yeah. So I mean, I predict he will be gone after this year.
Right, and if he's going to have this last year campaign where he's got to prove himself to be, we already know he's a receiving threat. If he's proven himself to be a rushing threat, this is the game to pad your stats. Game 1, this defense looks pitiful. I mean, a 17.5-point favorite for a WSU team that I thought it was going to be double digits, but I was thinking it was going to be more like 11 or 10. But Borghi, this has got to be a big game for him, and I think the coaching staff recognizes that too, because that's really the best weapon on this entire team. I mean, 100 yards rushing, 100 yards receiving is not impossible. If I could be more realistic, maybe 80 yards rushing, 70 yards receiving, at
I
least
think
over
100,
100
like
yards total yards.
I think 100, 150 is probably good. 100 and the rushing, 50 receiving is probably a lock for him. Just depends on how much he's used, obviously.
Right.
That's going to be one thing, because if he doesn't play in the second half or the fourth quarter, that's obviously going to be much harder.
Right, just a couple of big runs, and he'll get
Mhm.
well over 70 yards rushing
Yeah.
easily.
But I mean,
that's the guy I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, he looked good in that. He came back against last game of the season last year against Utah. He had some big runs. He looked like the guy that we all knew he was. So I think he's locked in. I'm gonna be interested to see how they use him and Deion McIntosh. Obviously, this game might be out of hand early. Should be out of hand. So we probably won't get a good enough idea. But I mean, I think that could easily be the best 1-2 punch in the Pac-12. We'll see how that plays out. But I'm really interested just to see which receivers step up. Obviously, Renard Bell's out for the year, so there's a slot position that'll probably go to Joey Hobart. But Lincoln Victor could be in there. And then guys on the outside, CJ Moore is that JUCO transfer, big body threat. Deshaun Stribling was a true freshman, early enrollee that started to turn heads. So, we saw some scrimmage numbers. We saw some spring game stats and plays, but who's going to actually stick? Who's going to have that chemistry? Who's going to make the plays in the big games? And then, I mean, the defense. Oh, one more thing on the offense. If the offense allows a sack that is not the quarterback's fault, I'm going to be disappointed, because, I mean, the quarterback's jersey should be, they shouldn't even have to go through the laundry after the game, is all I'm saying. The offensive line is still the biggest strength. They're returning, I believe, four of the 5 starters. So, they should be rock solid. And then on the defense, returning most of the guys, I want to see the pass rush, if they can take a step forward. Brennan Jackson, Ron Stone, what they can do. And then, obviously I've talked a lot about free safety, but that's, I think, the position that's most up in the air. But I mean, like we said, with the quarterback competition, I don't know if we're going to learn a lot about these guys in these first 2 games, because they shouldn't be pushed. They shouldn't be too difficult. But I mean, I want to see which guys step up, and which guys kind of show out. And I mean, which guys look bigger and stronger and, faster and, improve from this offseason.
In terms of a score prediction, I'm trying to think in my head. And to be honest, I would love to go guns blazing for WSU, but I'll probably go 31-21 WSU.
31-21. I don't think Utah State is scoring more than 2 touchdowns. I
have to be. I mean,
I'm saying
30.5 point favorite is crazy. I mean, I can't picture us winning by almost 3 touchdowns.
I think they'll win 35-10. I think
35-10.
This WSU offense, like, the running offense is good enough to win this game on its own. I mean, the running offense was great last year. I think they will pass the ball, but I mean, they're going to be. I think the offensive line will maul them. I think McIntosh and Borghi will run, all over the place and open up some passing stuff. But the rushing offense is good enough to win this game on its own. And I think the Cougar defense, while not really great in terms of on a Pac-12 level necessarily, I don't think they'll be anything to write home about. I think they're pretty good. I think they're solid, and when they're playing teams that are worse than them, I think the defense will really show what they can be. I think it'll be tough when they're playing against more talented people, but going against a Utah State team, they should handle them pretty easily. So I'll go 35-10.
31-21, locking it in.
So you're taking Utah State on the points, I guess. But that's going to do it for us today. We will be back with you next week, along with some more Dash shows. Stay tuned for what we've got going on all across the Pac-12 and even some other sports. Don't forget to tune in Monday at 12. Ryan and I will be on zone coverage talking about the upcoming week 1 of the NFL season. That is our Dash NFL show. And remember to follow Dash Sports on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel Dash Sports. And as always, bringing it back, go Cougs.